teaching, we will go over part 2 of Ascending Your Shadow Self by combining Life and Death, the Greater Guardian of the Threshold lecture by Rudolf Steiner from Knowledge of Higher Worlds and Its Attainment with the channeled Seraphim teachings from our Pearl Code books. For those who are new and have not seen part 1, that video is linked below. Since this is a lengthy lecture, if you prefer to read it via the blog, that is also linked below. So let us start with the Seraphim teaching from the Shekinah Codex on the crossing of the threshold of life and death. This is a place where we have placed many seeds to grow and to understand and to expand. However, this place, even though it seems as real as the one can feel with all the physical senses, it is something that has been created for the seeds to be able to understand themselves and to grow. Because where do seeds grow? Do they not grow within the darkness of the ground, within the earth? That is what is happening. When we speak of the earth, we mean the soil, the ground. Think of it, picture it. See the seed that was planted. See the roots expanding. These expand through ways of feelings. Feelings are created because they help ground you. And they need to be created so that you have a solid surface to stand upon before you expand above the ground and into the sereneness of the wind. The sereneness, the transcendence, is when you are able to flow with the wind and feel the sun. You cannot see the sun until you come above ground and out of the ground, which is where all are currently. It is important for the seed that has now blossomed and it is about to approach the cusp. It is important to stay focused on that light that you see. When it happens that they speak of a death state transition and they say go towards the light, it is because they have pierced that cusp. They have pierced a doorway, and that tunnel is what we speak of. See it. See the tunnel of light. Stay focused on that tunnel. Do not try to move outside of your own tunnel, because this is your own pillar of light within yourself, which is what your stem has now created. The stem of the flower that has now touched the cusp of the surface of the earth, that is expanded within, and it is ready to become above the ground, to become one with the air, which is spirit, and receive the fullness of the light. This is where one will exist when they have that transition. That is why it is important to stay one with the light and to stay within the center of your own tunnel. The stem that they speak of is your Kundalini fire that has ascended your spine and pierced the veil to be before this liminal threshold. The stem of the flower is accessed once the crown chakra has fully opened and spins at its highest potential. It is by way of its spiral cusp that one becomes initiated into this tunnel of light. This tunnel that will end with the initiate standing before the guardians of the threshold. In our prior lecture, we went over the lesser guardian, which is the initiation of your shadow work. This is where you stand before your true shadow essence. And so now we will proceed with the moment that you have ascended that stage and you are now meeting the higher guardian. It has been described in the foregoing chapter how significant for the human being is his meeting with the so-called lesser guardian of the threshold by virtue of the fact that he becomes aware of confronting a supersensible being whom he has himself brought into existence and whose body consists of the hitherto invisible results of the student's own actions, feelings, and thoughts. These unseen forces have become the cause of his destiny and his character, and he realizes how he himself founded the present in the past. He can understand why his inner self, now standing to a certain extent revealed before him, includes particular inclinations and habits, and he can also recognize the origin of certain blows of fate that have befallen him. He perceives why he loves one thing and hates another, why one thing makes him happy and another unhappy. Visible life is explained by the invisible causes. The essential facts of life, health and illness, birth and death, unveil themselves before his gaze. He observes how before his birth he wove the causes which necessarily led to his return into life. Henceforth, he knows that being within himself, which is fashioned with all its imperfections in the visible world, and which can only be brought to his final perfection in this same visible world. For in no other world is an opportunity given to build up and complete this being. Moreover, he recognizes that death cannot sever him forever from this world. For he says to himself, once I have came into this world because being what I was, I needed the life it provided to acquire qualities unattainable in any other world. And I must remain bound to this world until I have developed within myself everything that can be gained here. I shall someday become a useful collaborator in another world by only acquiring the requisite facilities in this physical world. Thanks to his insight into the supersensible world, the initiate gains a better understanding and appreciation of the true value of visible nature than was possible before his higher training. And this may be counted among his most important experiences. Anyone not possessing this insight, and perhaps therefore imagining the supersensible regions to be infinitely more valuable, is likely to underestimate the physical world. Yet the possessor of this insight knows that without experience in visible reality, he would be totally powerless in that other invisible reality. Before he can live in the latter, he must have the requisite facilities and instruments which can only be acquired in this visible world. Consciousness in the invisible world is not possible without spiritual sight, but this power of vision in the higher world is gradually developed through experience in the lower. No one can be born in the spiritual world with spiritual eyes without having first developed them in the physical world. Any more than a child could be born with physical eyes, had that not already been formed within the womb of the mother. Let us pause to go over what the Seraphim teach from the Shekinah Codex in reference to this. These are designed this way by the core goal of climbing all the spiritual degrees of the beehive, along with weaving all attributes of existence. This process is designed to be done while anchored in a corporal body. It is through this process that one can contain both that of earth and that of heaven. The corporal body is the world of shadows, that a soul anchors the needle point, which is the spark of its essence into at the start of this weaving process. The soul's goal is to push the needle through this world of shadows so it can then pull the thread in order to weave its blueprint of light within this world. The world is programmed to react by way of the physical senses. It is these senses that themselves are programmed to react by way of an external stimulus. It is your reaction to the external stimulus that molds your perception of this world. However, when it comes to that of the higher spiritual degrees, it cannot be perceived by way of the physical senses. Instead, it is felt by way of your internal compass. It is this that guides you by way of whispers, that gut feeling, the clear, cognizant ways of knowing. Those whispers echo from beyond the lowest spiritual degree. However, to fully understand the whispers, one must first understand its environment. One can only understand the vibrational spectrums that are likened to their cellular structure. What we mean here is that in order to understand the vibrational waves of those whispers, one must first understand the waves. The waves represent your cellular reaction to those vibrational frequencies which are absorbed. These waves are the transport system used by your spirit to send signals, which is information, to you. The more light of your essence that is woven through your cellular makeup, the more you are able to understand those signals. Now, understanding that the human body is programmed to understand by way of the physical senses, one can now grasp that it is the mind that controls the environmental perception. It is because of this that filtering through the mind is the biggest barrier for most to overcome while on their awakening journey. Spirituality cannot simply be understood or achieved solely through intellectual studies because it is a state of being. Ascension is about expanding your consciousness, and this is by way of going within yourself. The imprisonment of your spirit is caused by your unnatural tendencies to reframe and resist from allowing it freedom of expression. The mortal nature of control and retaining oneself in states of comfort is what keeps oneself bound by chains, illusional chains molded by the collective unconsciousness desires of mankind. When you unplug yourself from the collective unconscious webbing, then you allow yourself to see that you are who restrains thee. The first gates all incarnated must overcome are those of the physical senses. Each are part of the key code that is needed to unlock these chains that bind you. So now let us return back to this lecture. From this standpoint, it will also be readily understood why the threshold of the supersensible world is watched over by a guardian. In no case may real insight into those regions be permitted to anyone lacking the requisite facilities. Therefore, when at the hour of death, anyone enters the other world while still incompetent to work in it, the higher experiences are shrouded from him until he is fit to behold them. When the student enters the supersensible world, life acquires quite a new meaning for him. He discerns in the physical world the seed ground of a higher world, so that, in a certain sense, the higher will appear deficient without the lower. Two outlooks are open before him, the first into the past and the second into the future. His vision extends to a past in which the physical world was not yet existent. For he has long since discarded the prejudice that the supersensible world was developed out of the sense world. He knows that the former existed first, and that out of it everything physical was evolved. He sees that he himself belonged to a supersensible world before coming into the first time into this sense world. But this pristine supersensible world needed to pass through the sense world. For without this passage, its further evolution would not have been possible. It can only pursue its course when certain things will have developed requisite facilities within the realm of the senses. These beings are none other than human beings. They owe their present life to an imperfect stage of spiritual existence and are being led, even within this stage, to that perfection which will make them fit for further work in the higher world. At this point, the outlook is directed into the future. A higher stage of the supersensible world is discerned, which will contain the fruits matured in the sense world. The sense world as such will be overcome, but its results will be embodied in a higher world. The existence of disease and death in the sense world is thus explained. Death merely expresses the fact that the original supersensible world reached a point beyond which it could not progress by itself. Universal death needs have overtaken it. Had it not received a fresh life impulse. Thus, this new life has evolved into a battle with universal death. From the remnants of a dire-rigid world, there sprouted the seeds of a new one. This is why we have death and life in the world. The decaying portion of the old world adheres to the new life blossoming from it, and the process of evolution moves slowly. This comes to expression most clearly in man himself. The sheaf he bears is gathered from the preserved remnants of the old world, and within the sheaf the germ of that being is matured, which will live in the future. Thus man is twofold, mortal and immortal. The mortal is in its last, the immortal is its first stage. But it is only within this twofold world, which finds its expression in the sense world, that he can acquire the requisite facilities to lead the world to immortality. Indeed, this task is precisely to gather the fruits of the mortal for the immortal. As he glances at himself, as a result of his own work in the past, he cannot but say, I have in me the elements of a decaying world. They are at work in me, and I can only break their power little by little, thanks to the new immortal elements coming to life within me. This is the path leading man from death to life. Could he but speak to himself with full consciousness at the hour of his death, he would say, the perishing world was my taskmaster. I am now dying as a result of the entire past in which I am immersed. Yet the soul of mortal life has matured the seeds of immortal life. I carry them with me into another world. If it had merely depended on the past, I could never have been born. The life of the past came to an end with birth. Life is the sense world. It's wrested from universal death by the newly formed life germ. The time between birth and death is merely an expression for the sum of values wrested from the dying past by the new life. And illness is nothing but the continued effect of the dying portions of the past. In the above, the answer will be found to the question why man works his way only gradually through error and imperfection for the good and true. His actions, feelings, and thoughts are first dominated by the perishing and the mortal. The latter gave rise to his sense organs. For this reason, these organs and all things activating them are doomed to perish. The imperishable will not be found in the instincts, impulses, and passions, or in the organs belonging to them, but only in the work produced by these organs. Man must extract from the perishable everything that can be extracted, and this work alone will enable him to discard the background out of which he has grown, and which finds its expression in the physical sense world. Now, in the guarding of the threshold as described above, the product of the past is manifest, containing only so many seeds of the future as could be planted in the course of time. Yet everything that can be extracted from the sense world must be carried into the supersensible world, where man to bring with him only what he had woven into his counterpart out of the past. His earthly task will remain but partially accomplished. For this reason, the lesser guardian of the threshold is joined, after a time, by the greater guardian. The meeting with the second guardian will again be described in narrative form. But before we do that, first let us pause really quick to recap what the Seraphim teach from Cracking the Chrysalis. During the first stage of awakening, you are learning how to navigate the emotional and mental bodies. It is through the law of action that you learn how to balance them and achieve abundance. It takes strong dedication and discipline to hold constant self-awareness of your patterns and behaviors while on your awakening journey. Think of your emotional body like a paint palette in your hand. Each paint color is a different vibrational frequency representing your emotions. The paintbrush represents your mental body. These tools work together to paint your reality upon the blank canvas. Each hue of color on the canvas is a match to the mixture you selected. In other words, the vibrations you emit is what helps to paint your reality, because the canvas, as they teach in the book, is your reality. So what you perceive your reality to be is based on these paint palettes, but also in combination to how expanded your spiritual awareness of self is, as well as that intellectual expansion. So let us now return to this lecture. When the student has recognized all the elements from which he must liberate himself, his way is barred by a sublime luminous being whose beauty is difficult to describe in the words of human language. This encounter takes place when the sundering of the organs of thinking, feeling, and willing extends to the physical body, so that their connection is no longer regulated by themselves, but by the higher consciousness, which has now entirely liberated itself from physical conditions. The organs of thinking, feeling, and willing will then be controlled by supersensible regions as instruments in the power of the human soul. Let me pause for a second. We will deeply go over what that really means in a later teaching, But this, I can let you guys know, is about when you have a full spiritual awakening, which some people are teaching as a Kundalini awakening. I'm going to clarify that later because it is being incorrectly taught. So, but this is what he's talking about. And so what he means by the super sensible regions now controlling that, this is after someone has had that spiritual awakening, okay? The latter, thus liberated from all physical bonds, is now confronted by the second guardian of the threshold, who speaks as follows. Thou hast released thyself from the world of the senses. Thou hast won the right to become a citizen of the supersensible world, which thine activity can now be directed. For thine own sake, thou dost no longer require thy physical body in its present form. If thine intention were merely to acquire the facilities necessary for life in the supersensible world, thou needest no longer return to the sense world, but now behold me. See how sublimely I tower above all that thou hast made for thyself thus far. Thou hast attained thy present degree of perfection, thanks to the facilities thou wert able to develop in the sense world, as long as thou wert still confined to it. But now a new era is to begin, in which thy liberated powers must be applied to further work in the world of the senses. Hitherto thou hast sought only thine own release, but now, having thyself become free, thou canst go forth as a liberator of thy fellows. Until today thou hast striven as an individual, but now seek to coordinate thyself with the whole, so that thou mayest bring into the supersensible world not thyself alone, but all things else existing in the world of the senses. Thou wilt someday be able to unite with me, but I cannot be blessed so long as others remained unredeemed. As a separate freed being, thou wouldst fain enter at once the kingdom of the supersensible, yet thou wouldst be forced to look down on the still unredeemed beings in the physical world, having surrendered thy destiny from theirs, although thou and they are inseparably unified. Ye all did perforce descend into the sense world to gather powers needed for the higher world. To separate thyself from thy fellows would mean to abuse those very powers which thou couldst not have developed save in their company. Thou couldst not have descended had thou not done so. And without them, the powers needed for supersensible existence would fail thee. Thou must now share with thy fellows the powers which together with them thou didst acquire. I shall therefore bear thine entry into the higher regions of the supersensible world, so long as thou hast not applied all the powers thou hast acquired to the liberation of thy companions. With the powers already at thy disposal, thou mayest sovereign in the lower regions of the supersensible world. But I stand before the portal of the higher regions as the cherub with the fiery sword before paradise, and I bar thine entrance as long as powers unused in the sense world still remain in thee. And if thou doest refuse to apply thy powers in the world, others will come who will not refuse, and a higher supersensible world will receive all the fruits of the sense world, while thou wilt lose from under thy feet the very ground in which thou wert rooted. The purified world will develop above and beyond thee, and thou shalt be excluded from it. Thus thou wouldest tread the black path, while the others from whom thou didst sever thyself tread the white path. Let me pause and explain. So many people strive with a desire to have a spiritual awakening, or what they think is a spiritual awakening. But what one does not realize is that once you have done the work, which can take lifetimes for some, and you have this power vested upon you, once your Kundalini rises and you have had the pineal gland illumination, and you now have this power of your spirit, once you come to this threshold, it's now vested upon you. This power, it takes over you, guys. It is a force that is so strong that I cannot explain with words, nor does it compare to anything of this world. And you have so much energy. You're so expanded. You have access to so much knowledge. The knowledge, it just oozes out of you. And you had to do everything that you did prior to this stage, as far as the balancing of your mental thoughts and your emotions. You had to become that master surfer, that we teach in the books. It's all about the surfer mastering the waves of the ocean, right? So you had to balance these thoughts and these emotions so you could handle this power of this force. So you could be that master surfer, because this force carries within it both of these guardians that he's talking about. It has that of the shadows and that of the light, because that is what existence is. This is what we teach in the books. You have to acknowledge and accept all of this of existence within yourself and without. This energy is the very breath of life running through everything in existence, and it has the power to create or destroy. And so when you have that spiritual awakening, it is now inside of you. And it is what you are exhaling out into the world around you. And so it's not about, let me ascend and get out of this place. That's not what it's about, because, honey, you're not going to go very far with that attitude. What this guardian is explaining is that you're now vested with this knowledge, with this wisdom of existence. You have now conquered this within the sense world, which is the material physical world. And so how are you going to use this to best serve your fellow man? Because you're not separate from your fellow man. As much as some may want to think that they're better than, they're not. We're all equal. And so that's the power of spiritual awareness and spiritual maturity. Once this power is given to you, what are you going to do with it to help feed this into the world? How are you going to play a part? And I hope that these words really go deep within you. And if it ruffles some feathers, then there's a reason for that and you need to reflect. But you can't give up. I have seen so many that they give up because they expect an ascension to be a full physical event, and they expect everything to happen so fast, and they want instant gratification. For some, yes, but that is not going to happen until you see yourself as one with everything in existence. That means the shadows and the light. And then you must do the work to purify all that is within you, all of your chakras, your organs, your energetic bodies, to then allow room for this force, this energy, which we call your soul, to then fully be anchored within you. Continuing to do the work by having this knowledge, but also applying it. When it comes to a teacher, we just know it. It flows through us because we've lived it and we are living it. Spirituality is a living testament. It's not about believing in it. Either you know it or you don't. It should be learned, then proved by doing and being this illuminator. But the student may just study what the teacher says, repeat the words, but then they forget it. They're not living it and they move on. That's going to be the difference. If you want to become a master, if you want to become that teacher, you must live it. You must be it. And this is the whole story in the Jewish teachings of the 36 righteous ones. They are hidden. They just have ordinary lives, but they're here to help carry the weight for the masses. And this is also what the Seraphim teach as the elect in the books, or the light towers. The deeper meaning of the flaming sword and the cherub that he's talking about are connected also to the Kundalini fire in your pineal gland, which we're going to bring forth later in a later teaching. But for now, let's remember what the Seraphim teach of the cherub who guards the ascension gates of paradise from the ascension gates in a 144 Awakening book. It is when you ascend the 12 hours of the night that you will gain entrance past the spinning flaming sword of light and bear witness to the tree of life. It is 360,000 parasangs. The tree of knowledge is here in the aeon of night, meaning the material world. And it is 1.08 million in size. To discover knowledge is to discover death. To discover death is to discover knowledge. And this is the tree of knowledge that leads to death, because each of these combined is 360,000 parasangs, which together make that 1.08 million. And so to go over a full teaching on this, very lengthy teaching, you can view that video that is linked below. So now let us return back to the lecture. With these words, the greater guardian makes his presence known. Soon after the meeting with the first guardian has taken place, the initiate knows full well what is in store for him if he yields to the temptation of a premature abode in the supersensible world. Meaning, guys, there's no such thing as trying to speed up your awakening. This is not good. It doesn't benefit. Okay, that equals to soul fragmentation. And it is not good to look for a spiritual bypass or to look for others to do the work for you. An undesirable splendor shines forth from the second guardian of the threshold. Union with him looms as a far distant ideal before the soul's vision. Yet there is also the certitude that this union will not be possible until all the powers afforded by this world were applied to the task of its liberation and redemption. By fulfilling the demands of the higher light being, the initiate will contribute to the liberation of the human race. He lays his gifts on the sacrificial altar of humanity. Should he prefer his own premature evolution into the supersensible world, the stream of human evolution will flow over and pass him. After his liberation, he can gain no new powers from the world of the senses, and if he places his work at the world's disposal, it will entail his renouncement of any further benefit for himself. It does not follow that, when called upon to decide, anyone will naturally follow the white path. That depends entirely upon whether he is so far purified at the times of this decision that no trace of self-seeking makes this prospects appear desirable. Meaning that they have such a love and connection with existence, and especially mankind, that they desire to help their fellow men. They have this force that, it's so expanded, guys. I can't even describe it with words. The way it feels, like, this is what is so beautiful, is that it literally melts away all fears, all tears, all feelings of lack of self-worth. And you become, I really cannot find the words, but you have this desire that it's beyond a desire, that you just want to help. You want to serve. You do everything you can, and Spirit provides you with that vitality. So many people are like, how do you do everything you do, get everything done? That's because of this force. And I'm telling you guys, I am a witness. I am experiencing it. Look at me. See it happening. It can happen. It is real. And it is so beautiful. And when this force comes in, it will completely purify all of this egotism that he's talking about. Okay? And so that's the beauty of it. Because what he's saying is that if you choose to step forward for your own self-gain, he says how humanity is going to bypass you in the future for what is to come. Okay? And so that means that in the spiritual world, you're not going to get very far. And so that's why a lot of you guys feel so tired, and you know that you keep incarnating and coming back, because you want to try to expand as much as you can, but also you want to help. You keep coming back to help. You're like, okay, I gained so much from that last lifetime, so I'm going to come back. And I'm going to become a master in this lifetime. I'm going to do everything I can to write books, to, whatever you do, to go out there and to help others obtain this spiritual wisdom, to show them who they really are through these teachings. And that's what they're talking about here. After his liberation, he can gain no new powers from the world of the senses, and if he places his work at the world's disposal, it will entail his renouncement of any further benefit for himself. It does not follow that, and when called to decide, anyone will naturally flow with the white path. That depends entirely upon whether he is so far purified at the time of his decision that no trace of self-seeking makes this prospect desirable anymore. Because prior to this, when you're here. This is what I teach in my, I told you guys about when the Seraphim took me. Prior to this, you think, oh my gosh, I want to get out of here. But when you're no longer here and you're over there, you see all the potential, all the beautiful lights. You see all that you can come back and help. And so you no longer have those desires that you had before. And so that's what he's talking about. For the allurements here are the strongest possibility, whereas on the other side, no special allurements are evident. Here nothing appeals to his egotism. The gift he receives in the higher regions of the supersensible world is nothing that comes to him, but only something that flows from him. That is love for the world and your fellow men. That is that force I'm talking about, guys. There are no words to describe it, because this is the breath of life. This flows in you and outside of you. It oozes in everything. This is why, for those of you who have gotten my malice, this is why you feel what you feel, because as I'm making it, I'm weaving this force inside of it. And that is what he's talking about. Nothing that egotism desires is denied upon the black path, for the latter provides, on the contrary, for the complete gratification of egotism, and will not fail to attract those desiring merely their own felicity. For it is indeed the appropriate path for them. No one therefore should expect the occultist of the white path to give him instruction for the development of his own egotistical self. They do not take the slightest interest in the facility of the individual man. Each can attain that for himself, and it is not the task of the white occultist to shorten the way. Meaning, guys, we're not going to give you a spiritual bypass. We're not going to make things easy, because that's not what we want. We want it for the benefit of your soul's expansion. We want you to expand to your soul's potential. For they are alone concerned with the development and liberation of all human beings and all creatures. Their instructions, therefore, deal only with the development of powers for collaboration in this work. Thus, they place selfless devotion and self-sacrifice before all other qualities. They never actually refuse anyone, for even the greatest egotistic can purify himself. But no one merely seeking an advantage for himself will ever obtain assistance from the white occultists. Even when they do not refuse their help, he, the seeker, deprives himself on the advantages resulting from their assistance. Anyone, therefore, really following the instructions of the good occultist will, upon crossing the threshold, understand the demands of the greater guardian. Anyone, however, not following their instructions can never hope to reach the threshold. Their instructions, if followed, produce good results or no results, for it is no part of their task to lead the egotistical felicity and a mere existence in the supersensible world. In fact, it becomes their duty to keep the student away from the supersensible world until he can enter it with the will for selfless collaboration. What is meant here is that we do not want you to have a premature awakening, because this does not benefit your soul nor existence, because every action in existence affects everything else. So have grace and patience with yourself, fully surrender to spirit, and really make the time to have more self-discipline and awareness of what you're doing. And what I mean by that, not only physical actions, but the thoughts. Pay attention to the movements that you do, the routines that you do, and think and reflect, is this for the betterment of your expansion and your spiritual awareness of self and of existence? And really take the time to separate yourself from the distractions of the physical world, which is overstimulating and very loud. But it is up to you to disconnect yourself from that and to go within by way of prayer, meditation, and to focus all of your attention into your mind space, in between that little space that we call, this is the God space, and it's in between your pituitary and your pineal gland. Okay, this is where this ascension is going to be it takes place. Okay, it's within you. That's where the king lies sleeping in his chamber. That's where you meet him. take the time to do that. And sometimes when you go in meditation to fully conquer that, it can take 45 minutes to an hour to get to that stage, because you have to quiet everything and completely dissolve all feeling and all senses. And this is why the masters teach that you will know when you're starting to get there, because you will start to hear the sound wave that's within you, and your limbs will go numb, because you're slowly detaching all of your consciousness from the physical body and focusing it into your spiritual body, okay, which is not anchored a part of the sense world. So again, give yourself grace. So we end this, the Seraphim, they were talking to me. They want to end this with a quote from the Pearl Quote book. It is at this time you obtain eternal rest. To rest is to no longer hold thoughts or desires, because you are now unified with the mind of God. You are now one with the immovable race, and the idle mind is bestowed upon you. It is because of this that conquering the mortal mind, which is the ego, is so important upon your spiritual journey. The aeon copied is simply the ego of God. Is the ego of your own mind not the darkest of your own thoughts? Hence why, in order to ascend the underworld, the realm of chaos and duality, one must collapse the 9 ego layers within the mortal mind and anchor upon the higher mind of spirit. For this is the true meaning of an awakening. And this is the true meaning of crossing over the liminal threshold that stands between that of life and that of death. For this world is the world of death. But once you step over the threshold, you enter the world of life.